Beyond was first conceived in August of 2016, back when we were still in production on the Edeneth Chronicle. At that time, I was struck with inspiration for some imagery and some dialogue flow, and with that wrote parts of the banter between Dasa and Varuna in the lecture hall, as well as the core concept of a highbrow existential horror story akin to the final act of 2001. I also put together a rough idea of the structure, and added a command block as a MacGuffin, much like in the original series. However, at that time, structure blocks were being added to the game, which were then used throughout the production on Edeneth. And Loryn later convinced me that replacing the command block with the structure block would actually be a more logical fit for the imagery that I wanted. Obviously, this idea spent years on the shelf, but then in mid-2020, we decided it was time to leverage our resources to finally make it happen. So I sat down to flesh out the story, write the script, and then started putting together a team. First, Loryn returned as production designer to create the film's general look.
I worked on the set, which includes the temple and the underwater tunnels that the team goes through at the beginning, as well as all of the effects that you see in the big climactic sequence at the very end. So the temple is pretty fun to make. Basically, I had a flat world that I blew the heck out of in order to create a mostly naturalistic cavern. I dressed it up a bit to get the right look, but it was mostly just the work of lots of TNT. And same thing with the tunnels as well. I used TNT to create natural looking paths that the director can then pick which parts of the set he would like to use. The temple itself is a combination of a couple different styles of temples that I was just casually perusing in the research I was doing for how I wanted it to look. One of the main features of the temple that needed to work for the story was the main door. I spent a lot of time on the command block and redstone assembly that would get the door to work for the director. Unfortunately, though, I think something happened with the mods that we were using to record. Something broke. You can actually see in the final shot of the film, the door doesn't exactly work as it's intended, but it works enough, and we got the door to open most of the way, and that's really what matters, but it has a lot cleaner looking of an animation if everything went according to plan. But we spent a lot of time trying to troubleshoot that dang door. There was literally invisible blocks that were being created, and there was weird stuff.
Glad you came along, aren't you?
If only to keep Varuna in check. But don't tell me you subscribe to his reckless fancies, Anila.
Performance is always a high priority for us, and I was so excited to hire an entire professional voiceover cast for this piece. We put out the casting call under the working title Project Odyssey and received a whopping 78 auditions between the film's 5 characters. But once we found our perfect cast, I got to work directing voiceover sessions. Here are a few fun moments from those sessions.
I read that last section, I'm like, I'm a massive fan for cosmic horror, and it sounds really good. This reminds me a lot of Call of Cthulhu and Color Out of Space in terms of like just the trippiness of it. What? A lot of whats.
Right, now Scottish is going to just like take me a second to get into it, because if I go from one to the other immediately, then it might be some crossover. Background noise, I swear to God.
Yeah, thank you. That was fun.
Scottish accents are fun to do.
They were so easy to work with and turned in performances that, for me, greatly contributed to the immersiveness of the short. Now, with its cult status, we knew we couldn't return to Edeneth half-heartedly. Much like the original show, this had to be something that showcased our current level of production. And what better way to do that than to do less of it ourselves? No, seriously though, there are now extraordinary artists doing extraordinary things with the Blockbuster mod, and these people have dedicated themselves to the craft of Minecraft machinimation to a far greater extent than I'll ever achieve. And so we knew that the best way to present this story would be with a new director at the helm. And so we reached out to one of my favorite machinimators, Jed Lupoy, aka One Apple of Corrupted Films. After watching his Diversion series, I knew I wanted to work with him. His visual eye and knack for atmosphere made him a perfect match for telling this particular kind of story. And boy, did he not disappoint.
Filming Beyond was a relatively straightforward process. All of the assets like skins, sets, and scenario were provided in advance, so I was able to go through the script's events quicker than in previous projects. My setup is quite what you would expect. I would have the script open on one screen and Minecraft on the other. I like to set small milestones for myself, like splitting scenes into smaller parts in such a way that the body acting and filming work is not as intimidating to complete. The machinima making is done through MacHorse's Blockbuster and Aperture mods, which have been a massive time saver for me and enabled limitless possibilities for Minecraft machinima creation. It continues to amaze me how far Minecraft machinimas have come and how much impact MacHorse's mods made on the overall quality of everyone's work. All in all, I've had a lot of fun working with Raph, Loryn, and the rest of the production crew on this project, and I am incredibly grateful to have contributed to the success of the Edeneth Chronicle story.
Once principal photography wrapped, it was on me to mix and edit the rest of the film. Thankfully, with the machinimation shot to the dialogue, and with Apple's strong pacing, the assembly cut was relatively easy to complete. The real challenge came in the sound mix. So I'd really dedicated myself to upping my sound game at that time, and in fact was in the midst of Tony Weiss's audio engineering course throughout post-production. Sound has been of ever-growing importance to me, and I very much wanted to give this short a memorable and immersive soundscape. But perhaps my favorite piece of sound design is a series of sounds from the climactic sequence. In the script, I described that as an alien, incomprehensible sound. Even after writing that, I wasn't entirely sure just what that would sound like. And so, as I sat down to design the thing, I just started riffing to find it. First, I recorded a few raw samples using my own voice, then layered on effects and played with their sliders until it sounded gnarly and unnatural enough. The result is definitely one of the more interesting sounds I've ever created. I'm super happy with it. However, while I was tinkering with the edit and the mix, Loryn was busy handling all the VFX shots within the climax to help make it the visual spectacle that it is.
On the side of the visual effects, I had the director shoot 2 different plates of all of the shots, one with just the regular scene and another with a green screen sky. That way I can use that to mask off the parts that I needed to work with, as well as some other versions of the sets that were green screen. There was a little bit of a problem with the masking process, however, because a lot of the camera shake was actually built into the recordings. I now know to let the directors know that if there's going to be camera shake in these scenes, allow me to add it in post, because I had to track a lot of these scenes to get the masks to line up correctly with the shots. But once all the masking was complete, then I added all the star fields that kind of bleed into that scene. And I was just playing around, seeing how much worked and how much was too much, how much was too little before it started to take away from the scene, or just enough to add that extra bit of weirdness without having it be intrusive and without it taking up too much of the screen space. There's actually a little bit of a little, not Easter egg, but there's something that completely came around organically when I was making the scenes. I added a little creature somewhere in these scenes, just hiding out, just kind of hanging out, just saying hi. He was not part of the script. I just kind of created him, was like, there's probably some weird stuff going on in this weird in-between universe that they're in.
All these elements combine to form what I genuinely believe might be our greatest work to date. And I think it's quite telling that it took a production of this scale to accomplish it, because ultimately, that's what the collaborative art of filmmaking is about. And furthermore, it's what P-Cubed is about. It's a collective of artists working together to produce better and more ambitious works than any of us could create alone.